The fluorescent lights in the emergency room buzzed and flickered as I sat on the edge of the gurney, my heart racing, my hands unsteady. I couldn't wrap my mind around how I had ended up here. Just hours earlier, I believed the night would be harmless, carefree, exciting, and temporary. Now I was scared, disoriented, and overwhelmed, unaware that my husband had already made a choice that would alter my life completely. I had been married for 7 years. From the outside, my life looked stable, even fortunate, but inside it felt predictable and dull. My husband, Alex, was loyal and dependable, yet emotionally distant. We functioned well together, but somewhere along the way I stopped feeling seen. I didn't feel alive anymore. That was when I met Michael and Jason. It began as a simple conversation at a bar. Nothing serious, nothing planned. The laughter came easily, lighter than anything I had felt in a long time. They were engaging and unfamiliar, and the attention felt intoxicating. One drink turned into another, and before I could slow myself down, we were walking through the city beneath glowing streetlights, laughing without care or responsibility. I knew I was crossing a line. I knew it was risky, but in that moment freedom mattered more than caution. We ended up at Michael's apartment, and the night dissolved into fragments. Too much alcohol, too much emotion, too little thought. By morning, the excitement had vanished, replaced by a crushing sense that something was very wrong. My head pounded, my body felt weak, and panic crept in fast. When I tried to stand, I realized I needed help I couldn't give myself. The trip to the hospital passed in silence. I stared out the window, replaying every decision I had made, each one heavier than the last. I thought about Alex, about the life we had built, about how fragile it suddenly felt. I wondered how I could possibly explain what I had done, or if forgiveness was even possible. At the hospital, everything moved quickly. Nurses asked questions, ran tests, and spoke in calm, efficient voices. I answered automatically, but my thoughts stayed with my husband and the damage I feared I had caused. I didn't know then that Alex already knew where I was, or that he had chosen not to come. Hours later, a nurse told me he had called but wouldn't be arriving. The words knocked the air out of me. I tried calling him, texting him, but there was no response. The silence felt unbearable, louder than any monitor or announcement in the hospital. The next morning, when I finally saw him, his expression said everything. He looked exhausted, hurt, and distant in a way I had never seen before. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and final. He said he couldn't continue like this, that he needed space and time to think. Every word felt heavier than the night that brought me there. I tried to explain myself. I apologized over and over. I told him about the loneliness, the emptiness, the way I had felt lost inside our marriage. But none of it seemed to reach him. His eyes stayed guarded, his pain too deep for explanations. In the days that followed, my emotions swung wildly between anger, guilt, and despair. I wanted to blame him for leaving when I needed him most. I wanted him to understand my pain. But slowly, a harder truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just about one reckless night. It was about broken trust, ignored boundaries, and choices I had made without thinking of the consequences. There was no dramatic revenge, no shouting matches or bitter exchanges. Instead, there was reflection. I was forced to face parts of myself I had avoided for years. I saw how easily I had risked something meaningful for something temporary. I saw how my silence and avoidance had contributed to the distance between us. As painful as it was, that realization brought clarity. I understood that honesty mattered, even when it hurt. I understood that healing, whether together or apart, would require accountability and change. Life didn't pause for me to figure things out. It kept moving, demanding that I move with it. Weeks later, I took my first real step forward. Therapy became part of my routine. So did uncomfortable self-examination and difficult conversations. Alex remained distant, but the space between us forced me to look inward. I knew I had damaged something fragile and important. Still, I believed that facing my mistakes honestly was the only way to build something stronger, no matter what the future held. That night in the emergency room changed everything. Not because of the excitement or the mistakes themselves, but because it stripped away my illusions. It forced me to confront my marriage, my choices, and my unmet needs. I still don't fully understand why Alex walked away when he did, but I understand myself far better now. And maybe that understanding is the first step toward forgiveness, growth, and eventually peace.